My cousin Mark disappeared 3 weeks ago, leaving behind only his apartment keys and a note asking me to feed his cat while he was away on business. I knew Mark didn't have any business trip scheduled. He worked at a local auto shop, but family is family. His apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building downtown. Nothing seemed unusual at first. I fed Whiskers, watered his plants, and was about to leave when I noticed something odd. Every mirror in the apartment had been covered with newspaper. I peeled back the corner of one newspaper and immediately felt sick. Written in red ink across the mirror's surface were dozens of tally marks, grouped in sets of 5. I counted them, 847 marks total. What was Mark counting for so long? The bathroom mirror was worse. Under the newspaper, the glass was completely covered in frantic handwriting. It's watching, don't look, eyes in the reflection, it takes what it sees. I called Mark's phone. It went straight to voicemail, but I could hear something strange in the background of his outgoing message, like someone whispering, just below the threshold of understanding. That night, I decided to stay in the apartment to figure out what had happened to Mark. I kept the mirrors covered and settled on the couch with Whiskers purring on my lap. Around midnight, I heard the first whisper. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a soft, sibilant sound that made my skin crawl. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was hungry, expectant. Whiskers hissed and ran to hide under the bed. The whispering continued for hours, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away. I tried to locate the source, but it seemed to move around the apartment. Then, around 3 a.m., I made a terrible mistake. I walked past the bathroom and caught a glimpse of something in my peripheral vision. The newspaper had fallen from the bathroom mirror. Without thinking, I turned to look directly at my reflection. For a split second, everything seemed normal. Then I saw it, standing right behind me in the mirror, so close I should have felt its breath on my neck. It was tall and impossibly thin, with pale, mottled skin that looked like old parchment. But its eyes were the worst part, black, empty holes that seemed to pull at something deep inside me. And it was smiling with too many teeth. I spun around, but there was nothing behind me. When I looked back at the mirror, only my own terrified face stared back. But I could swear I heard something like laughter echoing from the glass. The next morning, I found a new tally mark on the mirror. Number 848. I should have left then, but I needed to know what happened to Mark. I spent the day researching the building's history and found something disturbing. Over the past 5 years, 7 tenants had disappeared from various apartments. All had left behind covered mirrors and personal belongings, as if they'd simply vanished mid-routine. That evening, I uncovered all the mirrors deliberately. If this thing was collecting something from reflections, I wanted to confront it directly. The whispering started immediately, but this time I could understand some of the words. Pretty eyes, bright soul, so much to take, so much to keep. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, that thing began to materialize behind me again. This time, I forced myself not to turn around. In the mirror, I watched as it raised one skeletal hand and placed it on my shoulder. I felt nothing physically, but something else, a terrible draining sensation, like part of myself was being siphoned away. The tally marks on the mirror began to glow faintly. Each look feeds me, it whispered, its voice coming from behind me and from the mirror simultaneously. Each glance gives me more of you. Your cousin lasted 847 looks before there wasn't enough left to sustain him. I understood then. Mark hadn't disappeared, he'd been consumed, bit by bit, every time he looked in a mirror. The thing in the reflection was some kind of parasite, feeding on people's essence through their own vanity and self-awareness. Where is he? I asked, still staring at the creature in the mirror. It smiled wider, and I saw Mark's face flicker briefly in its black eyes, screaming silently before disappearing again. He's here, it whispered. They're all here. And soon, you'll join them. That's when I remembered something from my childhood, my grandmother's old superstition about breaking mirrors bringing 7 years of bad luck. What if it wasn't superstition? What if breaking a mirror trapped whatever lived inside it? I grabbed the heavy ceramic soap dispenser and raised it above my head. The creature in the mirror began to writhe frantically, its whispers becoming shrieks. You can't. The contract is made. You've looked. You've fed me. I brought the dispenser down as hard as I could. The mirror exploded into 1,000 pieces, and the most horrible sound I've ever heard filled the apartment, like glass screaming and metal tearing. For a moment, I saw all of them in the falling shards, Mark, and 6 other faces I didn't recognize, all looking grateful as they faded into light. The whispering stopped. The oppressive feeling in the apartment lifted like a weight being removed from my chest. I found Mark 3 days later, wandering downtown with no memory of the past month. He was thin and pale, but alive. The doctors said he was suffering from severe malnutrition and dehydration, but they couldn't explain where he'd been. I never told him about the mirror creature. But sometimes, when I catch my reflection in store windows or car mirrors, I check carefully for shadows that shouldn't be there. Because I learned something important that night. Some things feed on vanity. And mirrors aren't just for reflection, sometimes they're windows for things that should stay on the other side.